The following presentation is on climate change and food safety in relation to Tropic of Orange. Tropic of Orange is a book by Karen T. Yamashita that follows the story of a magical event of 7 distinctive characters that begins on the longest day of the year. One of the major plot lines of Tropic of Orange is a orange tree that is planted directly on the Tropic of Cancer. The tree is believed to be descendant of the first orange trees brought to Los Angeles. The orange tree produces a single orange that produces the tropic line. One of the characters, Archangel, comes in possession of this orange and crosses the border from Mexico to California. The further northbound Archangel travels, so does the Tropic of Cancer, producing distortions and disturbances in time and space. One of the strangest things to happen is an outbreak of tainted oranges that kills people in Los Angeles. These tainted oranges are thought to be infused with cocaine, signifying a way to smuggle drugs into the United States. The tainted orange brings up our topic on climate change and food safety. In the section to follow, Esther is going to discuss the impact of climate change on food safety.
Global warming and climate change results from escalating greenhouse gas emissions due to industrial and forest destruction generated carbon dioxide and other gases. Climate change continues to threaten food production, security, and safety. Food security and safety entails the physical and economic means to obtain nutritious, untainted food in sufficient quantities to adequately meet nutrition requirements and health. As the Earth's temperature increases, so does the incidence of food contamination from pests, fungi, chemicals, and loss of crop viability. Unstable weather patterns such as drought weakens plant immunity and restricts access to clean water for irrigation. In 2008, a salmonella outbreak in the U.S. in which 1,500 people were infected was traced to produce which had been irrigated with wastewater in Mexico. A similar event occurred in Finland in 2005. Salmonella-tainted lettuce grown in Spain resulted in 56 infected and was traced to untreated water used for irrigation due to drought and water shortage. Data correlates foodborne salmonella poisoning to an increase in environmental temperature. Salmonella is the leading cause of bacterial food-related death. Floods, heavy rains, and hurricanes created by climate change contribute to the spread of pathogens and fungi. Asian soybean rust, a crop-decimating fungus, was spread from the origin of Asia to Africa to South America and then the U.S. via a Gulf of Mexico hurricane. Soil degradation, contamination, and loss of essential biodiversity occur with flooding. Pollutants change and weaken plant structure and the ability to fight off disease. Crop production is negatively affected and the use of chemicals increases in response to wage war on resistant or new pathogens. Ocean and water source bacterial contaminants proliferate as well as toxic metal contamination of fish. In an environment of increased ocean temperature, salinity, and pollution. Food is an international commodity purchased and distributed within a widely global market. As production of viable crops decline, world food costs increase. Geographical climate changes create shifts in crop-specific regions. Land which previously produced a specific product may no longer be able to sustain growth, and vice versa, causing shifting food belts. Food production and clean water shifts in one region of the world impact others. Production, distribution, trade mechanisms, health and human settlements, and their economies are adversely affected. Predictions for coming decades suggest that national and international security and its interests may be challenged due to forced mass migrations and displacement, progressive border tensions, and conflict over food, water, and Earth's assets. Societies already burdened with poverty, high population growth, inverse availability of resources, and weak governance are predisposed to civil unrest as a result of a lack of adaptive capacity to the consequences of extreme climate and weather phenomena, exacerbating an already existing infrastructure instability. The implications of climate change on food safety are complex and far-reaching. They impact all aspects of civilization. As it is unlikely that the commercial drivers of climate change will go away, ongoing collaboration and development of mitigation and adaptation strategies must be made priority within local governments and global communities. Survival now and hope for future generations depends on it.
Thank you, Esther. Since the Tropic of Orange over the last several years, there has been many documentaries made over the concern of food safety. Food Inc. is a documentary that expands on Yamashita's concern for food safety and how to feed a growing population. This documentary shows us how our food supply is becoming industrialized, not only to feed the expanding population, but in order for big business to make a profit. But this comes at the cost of food safety, the public health, and to the environment. Food Inc. reveals that we only have the illusion of diversity for our food choices when we enter a typical supermarket, when in fact there are only a few companies in charge of most of our food supply. One example of how big business influences our food supply is McDonald's. In the 1930s, a new restaurant was formed called the Drive-In. McDonald's was the most successful of these drive-ins and sought to become what we know today as a chain restaurant. McDonald's wanted their food to taste the same no matter where you got it in the United States. Since McDonald's is the largest purchaser of ground beef and potatoes, as well as one of the largest purchasers of chicken, tomatoes, and apples, they become one of the companies that control our food supply. So, why do we care that a few big businesses control the majority of our food supply? To answer this question, let's take a look at ground beef. According to Food Inc., in the 1970s, there were thousands of slaughterhouses in the United States. Today, there are only 13 slaughterhouses that process the majority of beef we consume. The hamburger patty of today can have thousands of pieces of different cattle ground up into that one hamburger patty. The odds increase exponentially that one of those animals was carrying a dangerous pathogen and much more likely to spread around the country to many more people than it would have just a few decades ago. Meat is not the only example of dangers to our industrialized food supply. Much of our industrial food turns out to be clever rearrangements of corn. This results in large quantities of calories being produced as cheaply as possible. The overconsumption of cheaply made calories in our food has resulted in chronic diseases such as cancer, type 2 diabetes, and obesity. Food Inc. concludes by illustrating the power of change lies with each one of us. When we run an item past a supermarket scanner, we are voting. We are voting to tell industry what foods we are willing to purchase and consume. It costs more money to eat healthy than it does to eat poorly in the short term. However, eating poorly can be much more costly in the long term. If you invest your money into eating healthy, local food, this can help save you much more money in healthcare costs down the road. And you'll be a happier, healthier you. So now that we've seen the impact of climate change on food safety, a documentary about what big business is doing to our food, and about eating well, what else can we do to influence change? There are some very simple things we can do to help our environment and in turn help the safety of our food supply. We can decrease our energy use. We can recycle, compost green waste, use fuel-efficient cars. We can carpool and use public transportation. And as we mentioned before, the food choices you make can make a difference. Look for organic foods, which cuts down on the use of pesticides. Look for local foods, which can reduce the amount of transportation used to get foods from the farm to your table. Also, look for foods that are in season. Look for businesses that use sustainable business practices. And look for foods that are in their purest forms, instead of some type of modified, clever rearrangement of the crop. And thank you for taking your time to watch our presentation.